if you are waiting online, it's just like normal church that we can't get people to be quiet in the house. So. Okay. Welcome to Exploration Bible Study. Got 2, 4, 6, 7 folks in the sanctuary and a good number online tonight. So welcome. I'm glad you're here. I want to begin with a word of prayer in just a minute, but the question I posed online for you all to be thinking about that Ruth actually asked today was, is it really Bible study if we're not studying the Bible? So since we're not really studying the Bible tonight, is it still Bible study? So that's the question to ponder. So, but still sacred texts. So, well, welcome. Let's have a word of prayer as we get started. Loving and gracious God, how good it is to come into this house and our many houses where we gather this night to study the word that you would have for us from these sacred texts. Thank you for the find that is before us that can stretch our minds, illuminate our minds, and fill our hearts. Give us insight and wisdom to these that are new texts for all of us. God, we come to you tonight. We know that on our hearts and minds are many things. We know that there are many who struggle with health, and we lift those up this night. For those that have been affected by the coronavirus, God, hear our prayers. For those on front lines in so many ways, hear our prayers. God, we know that there are those that struggle with issues of isolation. And we ask you to walk alongside those in this time. God, be with us this night. Guide us and direct us, we pray. In Christ's name, amen. Good evening. Well, it is good that you are here. And like other nights, Ruth is monitoring the chat online. We do have just a slight delay. I don't know. I guess YouTube does that in case, just like the networks, in case we say something we shouldn't, it gives us time to bleep them out. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, she is monitoring that online. So if you have questions that you want to pose in the chat, since as we are live, can't do that as recorded. I know a couple of folks emailed me today and said, ask for forgiveness that they would watch it later. Anyway, let's get going. I wanted to recap a little bit in case you're sort of watching this segment for the first time, or if you're jumping in, or if you've slept in the last 2 weeks, you might need a little refresher. So you'll recognize some of these slides. We are talking about the Nag Hammadi Library, and I know I said at the end last time that we would do the Dead Sea Scrolls. I changed my mind. I looked, and the reason I did that is I started looking at some of the other texts in the Nag Hammadi Library, and I thought, these stretch us, and sometimes we need to be stretched, and I think hopefully by the end of our hour tonight, you'll decide that you've been stretched. Anyway, a little bit of review. Nag Hammadi, the story, let me back up. Nag Hammadi gets its name from the place that these documents were found in Nag Hammadi, Egypt, and you see that map. The story is that in December of 1945, a farmer was searching for fertilizer, this loamy earth that sort of much like I think what we would most identify as sort of compost almost, and sort of just under the ground, and starts digging and finds this earthenware jar, a little bit afraid to open it, and doesn't quite know what to do with it because there might be spirits in it, and there might be gold, and the idea of there being a treasure sort of made them break it open, and they found these 13 books, codices, in there. They didn't quite know what to do with them. They kept them in their little courtyard of their home. Some were burned in a stove, but most were kept. Some were given to a local priest because the farmer that found it was wanted by police, and so safekeeping. They went to this local priest. The local priest said, "These look interesting. Let me, get those, see what they are," and found out really what they were holding were pretty incredible documents. There are these 14 Gnostic treatises. The idea of Gnostics is the idea of having this spiritual knowledge. There are 48 of those. There are these 3 Egyptian Greek wisdom texts. There's a partial copy of Plato's Republic, and there was just a lot of back and forth and who owns them and all of this, which is sort of an interesting story in its own right. I said last time it should be made into a movie. They were actually not published into English until some of them in 1972 and then some in 1977. Why were they buried? They were likely buried. The Council of Nicaea was going on. You had this festal letter of 367, which was this attempt to unify the faiths, condemn the non-canonical texts that were coming into formation. And so it could be, we don't know why they were buried ultimately, but it could be that the monastery buried them for safekeeping. It could be they were part of a funeral ritual. We really don't know, but those are some ideas. So anyway, that's sort of the recap from last time. And if you remember, last time we looked at the Gospel of Thomas in some detail. The 2 others, and if we have time, we'll do a bonus round tonight. But the 2 others that I wanted to look at are 2 very different literary genres. And one is what would be classified as poetry, and the other apocalyptic literature, and we would recognize that because it's very close to Revelation, and you'll see that. Anyway, so let's start talking about this is called the Thunder Perfect Mind. So most documents, when they come about, don't have a title, and we're going to talk about how they get chapter and verse and that sort of thing. But anyway, this is from Codex 6, which means the 6th book, or the book that they found. This one is very interesting because this is unique. This is the only copy that's been found. There's no other mention of it anywhere else. You'll see when we get to the secret revelation of John, or sometimes it's called the Apocryphon of John, that some of the church fathers refer back to that one, but this one is different. This one is unique. It stands on its own. It's the only copy we have. So there, again, for a couple of reasons. One is because it's a pretty recent find in terms of the study of it. And It's not as widely circulated, not as widely studied, so because of the chronology of when it was found and the sort of less maybe interest in it, there's been less study. I mean, you sort of gotta, we're in this on our own. I didn't study this in seminary. You're reading it at the same time I'm reading it, and you're coming up. So if you go look for a commentary on the Thunder, Perfect Mind, you'll find a few articles here and there about it, but it's pretty rare. So anyway, that's why trying to date it is somewhat of a fool's errand. We do know that, so this likely is somewhere from the 1st century BC to the 3rd century Common Era, but that's a wide range. I mean, others we can hone in on. This one we can't. We do know that, and you'll be able to see this, that the last page of this looks like it was sort of inserted, almost as, and I forget whether it calls it's an appendix or not, but something, it is something like that, it's different. So the last page is different. There is no indication of an author. It is a feminine narrator, however. And so that's part of what makes this different, and I wanted to share it for that reason, because our image in Scripture is almost all male, and so to have a sacred text that with this feminine narrator is very rare. Coptic, so the language of Egypt was likely its original language. This has been used I learned this as I was doing a little study, trying to find tidbits of information about it. This has been used in film. It's been set to music. It was and I don't know either one of these films, but a 1991 film, Daughters of the Dust, and a 2005 film, Kingdom of Heaven. Anybody in here ever heard of either one of those? I haven't, no. So, all right. So another piece about the Thunder, Perfect Mind is there is no reference to Jesus here, although it was found among the Christian documents. So remember how I said that there were these Christian documents, and then there's Plato's Republic and other more secular documents. This was found among the Christian documents. This divine voice that is a part of this is very close to the Gospel of John. So you'll hear some familiar words, if you will, or phrases. And the one that strikes me that I've highlighted is, and I'm looking at a page, and I know that folks that are watching may not have gotten this if you're not on the email, so I'll try to read what I'm saying. And if you are looking at it, it is 1:5. I am the first and the last. Gospel of John, right? I mean, that right there talks about, it has that hearkening to the Gospel of John. There is this identification with the roles and situations of women throughout, and Hal Taussig, who edited what I referenced last time, a New Testament, it talks a little bit about it, and these are his words. Thunder, this book, both associates women with the divine in unexpected ways and makes herself more real relative to life's challenges, promises, and ironies. So you do have a sense of the association and the identification with women in this book. Let me say a word about the chapter and verse designation. So we're so accustomed, if I say John 3:16, you can say, for God so loved the world that he gave it, right? So that wasn't always John 3:16. So somebody had to come in and identify chapter and verse, right? The same thing is here. So these are new enough documents that it takes time for chapters and verses to be sort of settled on. So what I sent those of you that are on the email list in the PDF is out of Tausig's New Testament, and he has done chapter and verse, but it is possible, because this is so new of a document, that if you would go someplace else, another scholar would have done a different chapter and verse. So all I'm saying to you is, if I say, if you look at chapter 1, verse 5, I am the first and the last, and you go to another scholar, chapter 1, verse 5 may not be the same thing. And we're so unaccustomed to that, because we're so used to, saying John 3:16, 1 Corinthians 13. We know what those are, right? And those are set, and nobody's changing them. But that's how it is. I want to just go through a little bit of this, and I've highlighted some. Maybe you've highlighted some too that you want to lift out. But short of reading the whole thing, there were some pieces that jumped out at me, and since I have the microphone, I'm going to share them. I would say that, again, we're all at the same place on this. I never studied this, so we're all at the same place. So anyway, here are some of the things that I found. 1:5, which I already mentioned, I am the first and the last. It continues, I am she who is honored and she who is mocked. One of the things that you will see throughout this is trying to understand God. The writer tries to understand God, as we all do, right? Define God. It's a question bigger than we can put words to. And it seems in this poem, long poem, that's what the writer is trying to do, is to define. So, chapter 2, I am the silence never found and the idea infinitely recalled. I am the voice with countless sounds and 1,000 guises of the word. I am the speaking of my name. You loathe me. Why do you love me and loathe the ones who love me? You who deny me, confess me. You who confess me, deny me. And then if you jump down to 2:10, I am she who is disgraced and she who is important. I mean, there's always these dichotomies, right? You need a microphone. Microphone? Okay. Thank you. I'm happy to help. I'm not quite sure what I would have done either. So I do know that the camera trying to focus on the TV is not the best situation. We're still sort of figuring all this technology out. We'll get better at it, but I know this is not the best way to do it, because I know watching a TV on a camera, you get lines and you get light that does weird things. So yeah, okay. So hopefully it'll be better. Hopefully the sound is okay. I'm not sure if it's our internet or others. So the next one that I highlighted is 2, sort of at the end of 18b, if you will. I am she who exists in all fears and in trembling boldness. I am she who is timid, and I am safe in a comfortable place. I am witless, and I am wise. Again, I am the all in all, right? I put on the screen this Colossians passage, Colossians 3:11, that it really reminded me of. It is trying to define who God is. In that renewal, there is no longer Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all and in all. That Christ is all and in all seems to be, if there were a theme verse for, the thunder, a perfect mind, it's that Christ is all in all passage. 3, 6, 7, and 8. I am she who was hated in every place, and she who was loved in every place. I am she whom they call life, and you all call death. I am she whom they called law, and you all called lawlessness. I think as I read this, my favorite part, the one I not only highlighted but put a star beside, is 4, 6. And we always talk about what can we take away? What can we walk through the doors with to go through this next week? This is my star, okay? 4, 6. Don't reject the small parts of greatness because they are small, since smallness is recognized from within greatness. Would it be that we would live like that? That don't reject the small parts. We all have small parts of greatness within us. Don't reject them because they are small. Live into them. 4:20. I am the coming together and the falling apart. I am the enduring and the disintegration. Are there others that you found? So then what Hausig describes identifies as chapter 5, he also identifies as appendix, which is that one that clearly is later. And there's a couple of reasons here. What he has identified as chapters 1 through 4 were pretty complete. We're going to see in the secret of Revelation of John that there's a lot of holes. There's a lot of missing pieces. And 1 through 4, chapters 1 through 4 of the Thunder Perfect Mind is a really complete document. And then you get chapter 5, which is this choppy, missing pieces. So whenever you see, the ellipsis, and I, light, and here, there are missing pieces in here. But let me read just a couple of pieces. And I, light, and hearers, to you the great power, and will not move the name, he who created me, but I will speak his name, the name, it is he who created me. See how the gender change as well? So, comments about the Thunder Perfect Mind? What strikes you that we maybe haven't said? We don't know. So Terry's question is, was this just the one that survived, or would there have been other copies of this? Hard to tell. My guess would have been that there would likely have been other copies, but this is the only one we've found so far. Although There would not have been as many copies because it is not specifically, it's not Jesus oriented, right? We don't find Jesus here, so it doesn't have that importance. So it wouldn't have been, and copies are going to be copies by hand at that point, so it's not going to be, by not being as important, it's not going to be copied as much. So certainly many, if it was copied, it would have been copied much less. But hard to tell. I mean, we didn't know this even existed until 1945. So. Others? We're good? All right, let's jump a little bit, both in genres. So, the secret revelation of John. First of all, I alluded to this just now, but if you have this in front of you, or if you read this at some point, or if you get, I don't have my copy of the Nag Hammadi, this is harder to read, and you will find in this one there are lots of brackets. So there are brackets and there are parenthetical pieces. The brackets are missing pieces, and so we can this would be the least complete document that we have ever studied as a group. And it's harder for that reason, because what they are doing, so think of the brackets, there are words between the brackets, but the words that are in between brackets are best guesses. They are educated guesses about what is between the brackets. Sort of to Terry's question on the other one is, we know of 4 copies of this. 3 of them were actually found in the Nag Hammadi clay jar, and 1 other one. And so you will see, if you're reading off of what I sent, you will see abbreviations, NHC, which Nag Hammadi Codex, and you'll have a number beside that, and that is which book did it find. So at Nag Hammadi, they found 3 versions, 2 long and 1 short version of the secret revelation of John. And then there's this other one that was discovered in 1896 that is a short version. So the first time we knew of any long version was in 1945. So you do have this, and it's called the Berlin Codex. And so that's what BG stands for. And I know that G is not C, but it is BG. But the Berlin Codex is that. We know that it has to be dated before 180 because one of the church fathers, Irenaeus, talks about it and calls it illegitimate. So we know that he was not fond of it. He wrote this piece in 180 CE, so we know that it has to date prior to that because he talks about it and he doesn't like it. So while the storylines are familiar, the usual understanding is different. You will find, and we were talking about this before class began, there is this connection to Revelation. It is an apocalyptic document, and it doesn't have quite the hallucinations, I would guess, that we find in Revelation, but there is imagery that is interesting. So it is this So one of the quotes that I put up here, it says, Christ reveals to John that it was he who caused Adam to consume the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Additionally, it is revealed that Eve is a helper sent by agents of a higher order to help liberate the light imprisoned in creation and in Adam. So we usually think, the common understanding of the Genesis story of Adam and Eve is, the fall. We talk about the fall, right? And how, it's their fault, that sin is in place. And this puts a different spin on it. Same story, but it puts a different spin on it. And so we're gonna look at that a little bit. So you do have this good and evil. I think Jeff talked about yin and yang kind of setup. And then toward the end of the book is this question and answer between John and Christ. And there are all these, John has these questions, as any of us would have, right? But John has these questions that he wants answered. So there are some things to know. If you need a little program or handout of who the names are to figure it out. There is Yaldabaoth, or I'm not sure that's the pronunciation, but is this evil force. It's serpent-like, it's a lion's head, and I sort of found this illustration. You can sort of, that somebody's trying to put pen and ink to what this might be, but it's the evil force. It's this serpent-like animal. There's Barbelo, and that is God in many forms. It talks about it being the Spirit. That really can't be fully defined. And then there is it. As you read through here, it is always capitalized. So it is God. So let's get into it a bit and take a look. So talks about the appearance to John. What's chapter 2? With chapter 1 is a whole 2 verses. But chapter 2, now it happened one day when John, the brother of James, the son of Zebedee, was going up to the temple. A Pharisee named Ananias approached him, and he said to him, "Where is your teacher, the one whom you used to follow?" And he said to him, "He returned to the place from which he came." So that's the setup, right? And then down chapter 3 really starts the appearance. Just then, while I was thinking these things, the heavens opened, and the whole creation below the heaven was illuminated with light below heaven. There's one of those brackets, right? And the whole world quaked. So if you're not looking at this in print, quaked is a great example. You have in that verse 3, you have and the world and then ed. That's what you've got to work with. And so the scholars have put and the whole world and then Q-U-A-K, quaked, to make that sentence. So there's a lot of that in here, and some places more than others. So that's the appearance narrative right there. I was afraid and I watched, and behold, a child appeared to me. Then he changed himself into the form of an old man who had light existing within him. So here's the good and evil. Here's the I am the all in all, back to the all in all child, old man. I am everything to 3:11. I am the one who dwells with you always. I am the Father, I am the Mother, I am the Son. Even here we get, we have pretty much wiped out feminine language out of Scripture. And here we get, and who knows? I mean, that may have been the reason that this didn't make it in, But I am the Father, I am the Mother, I am the Son. I am the one who exists forever, undefiled and unmixed. Now I have come to instruct you about what exists and what has come into being and what must come into being, so that you will understand the things which are invisible and those which are visible, and to each you about the perfect human. If you skip down to 4:2, right at the top of the second page if you're reading along, he said to me, "The unity is a monarchy with nothing ruling over it. It is," so it is the God and Father of all, the holy, the indivisible, who exists over the all, and who, they didn't put anything in there, probably because there's such a big gap, in corruption, existing as pure light into which it is not possible for any light of the eye to gaze. I have highlighted that entire column, and what I wrote beside it, that entire column from 5 through really down through 30, is an effort to describe God. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just to give you an idea, if you haven't read it, it is the Spirit. It is not appropriate to think about it as God, small g. That would be sort of a God. It's bigger than a God. Or that it is something similar, for it surpasses divinity. It is a dominion having nothing rule over it. See all the capital letters of it. For there is nothing existing before it, nor does it have need of them. It does not need life, for it is eternal. It does not need anything, for it cannot be made perfect, as though were deficient and only required perfecting. Rather, it is always totally perfect. It is light. It cannot be limited, because there is nothing before it to limit it. It is inscrutable, for there is no one before it to scrutinize it. It is immeasurable, because there is no other to measure it, as though anything exists before it. I mean, it goes on and on that way. It is that definition that, if you had a question about who God is, this is the effort to, don't try it. It's bigger than we can imagine. If you jump over to 5, the other place I highlighted, 5:13, here we are introduced to Barbilo, which, remember, is this God in many forms. So 5:13, and its thinking became a thing. She appeared, the feminine. She stood in its presence in the brilliance of light. She is the power which is before the all. It is she who appeared, she who is the perfect providence, pronoia, of the all, the light, the likeness of the light, the image of the invisible. She who is the perfect power, Barbilo, the perfect eternal generation of the glory. And then if you jump over to 7:7, it continues to talk about the invisible Spirit rejoiced over the light which had come into being, the one who was the first to appear from the primal power, which its providence, pronia, Barbilo. And it anointed him with goodness, Christhood, so that he became perfect. Let's jump on down and get a, yep.
As I read, first of
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. So Jeff is saying that what I said in trying to describe is you can't describe it. It is beyond human understanding. Mm. Right. Right. Yeah, Barbilo is hard to get your head around. Jeff is saying there are times where he thought could this be the Virgin Mary, and there are other times that that's not. I mean, it really is sort of this. You can't really you can't identify. If we look at 8 briefly, right at the start of 8, for from the light, which is the Christ, and immortality through the divine Spirit, the 4 great lights appear from the divine autogens, so that they might stand before him. The 3 are will and thought and life, and the 4 are grace, understanding, perception, and prudence. What is the other piece that I thought is it's interesting that we pulled these 2, because it talks about the perfect mind, and mind is capitalized over in 9:2, and from the understanding and the perfect mind through God, coincidental, and probably not referring to what we just read, but through the approval of the great invisible Spirit. So let's talk about this evil force for a minute over in 10. We get this, we start to have where you get this drawing from, starting in 10:11, having the face of a serpent and the face of a lion. His eyes were shining with fire. She cast him away from her outside of those places, so none of the immortals might see him, because she had given birth to him in ignorance. Yeah. So, and then it's in 18, she names him. She named him Yaldabaoth. He is the chief ruler, the one who attained a great power from the mother. Obviously, this is the power of the evil, not God. And down in 11:24, they all have double names, one set of names from desire and wrath, but yet other names which are given to them by the glory of heaven. The latter are the ones which reveal their nature in truth. 13, he allotted portions out of his own fire, but he did not give them any of his power from the pure light of the power which he had drawn from the mother. So there is this, the tension of good and evil, and there's, we have that in Scripture, but this personifies it. This personifies good and evil and the tension that is always, sort of pulling back and forth. So if you saw the footnote, if you're reading along this version, the footnote says chapters 16 and 17 are found only in the Nag Hammadi Codex II. They contain an extensive list of parts of the human body and the names of demons associated with each. So I haven't found that version yet, but maybe interesting to take a look at. I want to get over to 18:7. You'll recognize that this starts to be a recognizable story. 18:7. They said to him, "Blow into his face from the Spirit which is in you, and the object will arise." And he blew into it from his Spirit, which is the power from the mother, into the body. And at that moment he moved. So Adam becomes mortal, right? That's the point, the breath of the Spirit. You're holding a microphone.
Bob Anderson said it seems like all in the first 14 chapters was taking place in the holy realm prior to the creation story.
Yeah, absolutely, it does seem that way. I mean, we don't have places, but we're so used to jumping into Genesis, the first chapter of Genesis, and we get the creation story, and this is like the prequel, and we don't get to Genesis 1 until the secret revelation of John 18. So all the rest is prequel. All the rest is this tension going on in this other realm, and I think Bob's exactly right. Yeah. So let's get over to the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So this is 20. 20 verse 1. The chief ruler took him to the place and placed him in paradise. So it talked, chapter 20 is very familiar of the Genesis story, right? So 20:18, but the tree which they called knowledge of good and evil is the reflection epinoia of the light. Concerning her they commanded, do not taste of it, which means do not listen to her. They issued this commandment against him so that he might not look up to his perfection and realize that he was naked of his perfection. But as for me, I set them right so that they would eat. I said to him, Christ, was it not the serpent who instructed her? He laughed and said, the serpent is the one who instructed her about the sowing of desire, pollution, and instruction, because they are useful to it. Yet it knew that she would not obey it because she is wiser than it. And he wanted to bring out the power which had been given to him, and he cast his trance upon Adam. So here you have Christ in the midst of this story, right, which is also odd to us, but it's the recast, what I said earlier in the introduction to this book, it's the recasting. It's a familiar story, but it's the recasting it in sort of a different light, a different way to look at it, and where is the role of Christ from the get-go, if you will. So 21:20, you'll recognize as well. He said, now this is a bone from my bone and a flesh from my flesh. Because of this, a man will leave his father and his mother and will cling to his wife, and the two shall become a single flesh. Sounds familiar, right? So it gets a little dicey in 22. So let's skip to 23. So 23 begins you can read that on your own. I don't have to read it in here. 23 begins this question and answer period, right? It's like we do in here. It's like, well, we get to the end and we're going to do some we're going to do some Q&A. So like every conference you're in. So 23 begins the Q&A section. John and Christ. I said, so I've highlighted a lot of them. I don't know if I got them all, but I said, Christ, will the souls of everyone live in the pure light? So that's 23:1, 23. I'm not going to give you the answers. If you want to read the answers, you can. 23:13, I said, Christ, what will the souls do upon whom the power and the spirit of life descended? But who did not do these things in order that they might also be saved? 19, I said, Christ, when the souls of those leave the flesh, where will they go? 25, I said, Christ, what about those who do not know thee all? What are their souls, or where will they go? 32, I said, Christ, how does the soul become smaller and enter again into the nature of the mother or the human? 37, I said to him, Christ, where are the souls of those who understood but turned away? 24:1, I said, Christ, where did the counterfeit spirit come from? You get the idea, right? So it's this, really good questions and deep. So, and, there are sometimes long answers, sometimes short answers to all of those. So, it's an interesting, when we think of the revelation of John, we think of Revelation that we have in our, canonical scriptures, and it's like that, but different. It has less hallucinations, but probably as much imagery. So the bonus round that I spoke of that I didn't send any of you, but I want you to know it's out there, is I think this also sort of falls into the genre of poetry. This is called, and was found at Hammadi. It's called the first book of the Odes of Solomon. So as we sort of close tonight, I'm going to leave this with you. We can take some questions after, but this is Ode 3, and just listen. I put the love of the Lord, and his members are with him, and I am raised up by them, and he loves me. Indeed, I would not have known how to love the Lord, except that he had continuously loved me. Who is able to recognize love, except the one who has been loved? I cherish the beloved, and my whole self loves him, and wherever his rest is, I am also there. I will not be rejected, because there is no suspicion with the Lord, the Most High and compassionate. I have been joined to the Lord because the lover has found the one who is beloved. Because I love the one who is the child, I will become the child. Truly, whoever is united to the one who does not die, neither will he die. And the one who delights in the life will become alive. This is the Spirit of the Lord, who is not deceitful, who instructs humanity so that they might recognize his paths. Be wise, understanding, and awakened. Hallelujah. I just find that pretty powerful stuff for that would make a good devotion anytime, right? So, a few minutes for if there are other questions that I don't know the answers to, but want to comment. Yeah, Terry. Yeah, good question. So they feel pretty sure that this is actually from John, or is this another one? So not enough study has been done, I don't think, on this. I've seen sort of two commentaries, and they have different views. So I don't think enough has been done on this to know that. Irenaeus, yeah. Yeah. So the gospel would have been prior to that. Yeah. So that would have been, I think, that writing was in 180. So yeah. Others? Anything online? No. Well, I know you've heard this story before, but I think there's a few things going on in the next, even in the midst of a pandemic. We're going to have Christmas, and so I think we will pause, and our next session will be on the 8th of January, and we will do the Dead Sea Scrolls, unless I change my mind, right? So, but I don't think I will. I think we're done with Nag Hammadi. I think we'll move to Dead Sea Scrolls. Jeff and Carol leave tomorrow for Florida, safe travels, and come back in the spring refreshed and bring warmth to us when we will need it badly by that time. So, traveling mercies to you as you go. So. Thank you all for being here and for being watching at home, and blessings, and we'll gather again in January. Hope to connect with you in a variety of ways between now and then. So thank you.